Hello and welcome back. So another great week of hockey, some highlight reel goals, some impressive performances, and a lot to like fantasy-wise from some guys. We'll cover week 3 performers as well as potential waiver ads and ads by category. But as always, let's jump right into the week 4 schedule. So the schedule for week 4 is a little more normal in the sense that there's only 7 teams who play 4 times, and then there are 5 teams who only play twice, and that's a little bit more like what you'll see throughout the season. Just a quick reminder, if you want to look ahead to playoff weeks or future weeks, you can check out the interactive version of the schedule you see on the right. That's available via the Patreon link in the description below. I did have a few questions about playoff schedules and looking ahead. You can use this interactive schedule to plan some longer-term moves, and you can find that in the description below. But the teams that only play twice, you can see it right here in red: Colorado, Columbus, Minnesota, St. Louis, and Winnipeg. So some good teams only playing twice. As I'm recording this video, Columbus just got completely blown out of the water by New Jersey, so I'm sure they're happy to get some time off and wash that loss off of them because they got absolutely hammered 7-1. Colorado, Minnesota, St. Louis, a lot of these teams have guys that you're going to have picked up in previous weeks that you maybe streamed for a couple weeks or they got hot. If you have any kind of middling guys that are lower percentage, maybe drop those guys because they only have 2 games this week. And then what you see in the dark green, these are teams with 4 games, and Anaheim, Buffalo, Carolina, Detroit, Florida, LA, and Washington are those 7 teams. Now, of those 7 teams, the best schedule this week would probably be the Florida Panthers. So they play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, so all the heavy nights, but look at their matchups against Arizona, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim, all winnable games. They're on the road, so there's a little bit to that. Let's dive into it right now. Let's just get right into the Florida waiver ads. Most players on Florida are going to be owned up. There are, however, a few whose ownership is under 50%. So Anton Lundell, not the best stats to start the season, but apparently he is getting some PP1 time with Tkachuk, Barkov, Reinhart, and Montour. But yeah, only 4 points in 9 games, a couple hits, a couple blocks, but nothing crazy there. A better option, a slightly better forward option with the same ownership percentage is Carter Verhaeghe. 7 points in 9 games, averaging 2 shots per game. No hits or blocks really from him. And yeah, so he's more of a depth play. A lot of these guys, so you can see this Verhaeghe, Luosterainen, and Colin White. That's basically, Anton Lundell, more so than that, are these third line guys, maybe the middle 6 guys in Florida. So you can usually find these guys, but if you want a defenseman, the absolute best file to grab this week is probably Brandon Montour. So 8 points in 7 games, 9 hits, 10 blocks, 2 power play goals, 20 shots, almost 3 shots per game, and he's averaging 25 minutes a night in the absence of Ekblad. So he's playing on the top pair with Gustav Forsling, and he's getting PP1 time, as I just mentioned before. And then last game, Montour went off with a goal, 2 assists, 3 points, +3, 2 hits, a block, and 6 shots in 27:50 time on ice. And he's riding a 3-game point streak as well. So if you need a defenseman this week, there's probably no better option than Brandon Montour. He's only 36% owned. Now, if you're in a deeper league and you need someone, how about Eetu Luosterainen? 6 points in 9 games, +8. He's getting third-line minutes with Lundell and White, and has been relatively productive in that role so far. So you can see a nice split between goals and assists, 6 points on the year, +8. And then Colin White, his line mate, is also pretty productive. So 7 points, a little bit more assist heavy, but he's still got the 2 goals, 7 hits, 2 blocks, 13 shots. Both of those guys are 2% owned, so they will probably be there for you in deeper leagues. As I mentioned before, a lot of the rest of the guys on Florida are probably going to be owned up. I did hear that Ekblad might be back a little bit sooner than expected, but that's probably not going to be this week, so I wouldn't necessarily worry about that. Now, you may look at this schedule and see Buffalo playing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday and think, hey, that's an almost perfect schedule on all the off nights. But the reason I put them second was their strength of their opponent. So if you look at it, Detroit on Monday, then they've got Pittsburgh on Wednesday, then they've got a road back-to-back in Carolina and in Tampa Bay. So, yeah, Florida has some pretty favorable matchups here. They're at the Mullet Arena. Then they're doing this West Coast swing. So if you don't like the concept of an East Coast team going out west, and as you can see, Pittsburgh just went out west and they went 0 for 4. Gave up 18 goals against and didn't really have any success whatsoever, and they're a pretty good team. So if you think the same thing will happen to Florida, then maybe check out Buffalo, as they've got a little bit of a better schedule, at least in the first half of the week. So maybe if you want to stream these guys for Monday and Wednesday and then drop them on Friday, or maybe drop them on Saturday, because you'll still get the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But the second night of that back-to-back is going to be really tough, and both of these games in enemy territory are going to be difficult for Buffalo. But there is a pretty decent amount of options to look for on Buffalo. So not necessarily a waiver guy, but if you drafted Rasmus Dahlin, then congratulations, you hit the jackpot. So right now, 5 goals, 5 assists, 3 power play points, 28 shots, 14 hits, 18 blocks, and he's just been on fire, 10 points in 8 games. So yeah, just wanted to give him a quick shout out, but let's take a look at some of the guys that you may actually be able to own. Now, Tage Thompson may be available in some shallower leagues, and his numbers are fine. So 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in 8 games. But if you look, the shot volume is what you're looking at in terms of trying to pick him up. 3.75 shots per game is really good, and that is baking in 2 back-to-back 8-shot games against Montreal and Chicago towards the back end of this week. So he's apparently a guy who, he might get you a pretty decent floor in terms of his shot volume, but then he can go off for 8 shots a game, back-to-back games. And Montreal and Chicago aren't known for defense, so maybe that would be part of that explanation. But they do have some favorable matchups this week at the beginning half of the week, so maybe if you want to add that shot volume for the first half of the week and then drop him later. But 65% owned, he's maybe not there for you on your waiver wire yet. So maybe go with Victor Olofsson. I mentioned him last week. He had a few goals but hadn't gotten going on the power play yet. But if you listened to me and you picked him up, he had 2 power play goals last night against Chicago, had 6 shots. He's definitely streaky, and that can be difficult for a streaming option because it is a high risk, high reward. If you can see here, he doesn't do a lot on the off nights. So he has a 2-goal game, nothing. 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points, +3, looks great. Nothing. 2 goals, both on the power play. So he's high risk, high reward. But if you can kind of hit it where you pick him up on the right night, he'll do a lot for you. And I mentioned his shooting percentage was a little bit lower, and he wasn't scoring on the power play yet. He did get those 2 power play goals now, but he's averaging 3.25 shots per game. So that's going to get you some volume, which should give you a decent floor in terms of what you're going to get out of him. But again, 6 shots on the night he scored here, only 2 shots, so pretty good shooting percentage there, and then 6 shots last game where he scored 2 goals. So it's really hit or miss with Olofsson, but he is, I believe, top 10 in the league in goals. We'll get to that in a little bit. Now, the next guy on this list, Casey Middlestat. If you need a deeper option, he's only 7% owned, 6 points in 8 games, very assist heavy, but getting it done on the power play with 4 power play assists. And he also had a shorthanded goal. Not that you can necessarily count on that again, but it is pretty interesting that they're using him shorthanded and he's able to pot one earlier in the season thus far. Now, if you want an even deeper play, Dylan Cousins, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points, 21 shots. That's 2.6 shots per game. He's only 5% owned, so he's a potentially decent option. He's kind of playing a little bit further down in the lineup, but he's a guy that you could look for to potentially give you some depth if you're looking at a 4-game week from these guys. But the best ad for the Sabres may actually be Craig Anderson, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but look at his stats. So Buffalo is 6th in the league right now in goals against, which is promising for both of their goaltenders. And everyone, including myself, was pushing Eric Comrie as the waiver ad in previous weeks, and he got a lot of that ownership after that first good week. But last week, Comrie had a 4.02 goals against and an 862 save percentage and didn't win a game. Now, Anderson's numbers weren't much better than last week. Anderson's numbers weren't much better last week than Comrie's, but he did get a win. So maybe try out Anderson, who will probably get 2 starts this week. And if you look at his numbers on the year, he's got 3 wins and a 946 save percentage, a 166 goals against, and only 18% owned. So he could be the play this week. He's definitely going to get one of those starts in the back-to-back, but I don't like playing Craig Anderson against either of those two teams, just because of the high-powered offense that they could potentially throw at him. Now, as we return back to the Week 4 schedule, this will be the last time that we see this graphic, so take one last look at it. And you see Anaheim here. They also have 4 games, and they play on a Sunday. So they do have some favorable matchups, and this is a little bit. I kind of thought of putting them a little bit higher in terms of their schedule, being the best schedule, but I just don't trust them. They're the 4th worst in goals against thus far, and last in the league in goal differential at -19. So if any of you, Mark, are wondering why I didn't recommend Gibson in fantasy drafts, this would be why. But I'm sure Mark is depressed enough just watching the Ducks play every night. So the problem with the Ducks this week is they play all the heavier nights, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then their Sunday matchup is the worst one of the week for them. So with that said, is there anyone that we can look for fantasy value? Now, this is pretty funny / interesting. Usually when I look up players on any given team, the top guys are in the top 50 or top 100 in Yahoo Fantasy Rank, but for the Ducks, their highest ranked player is Troy Terry, who's currently ranked 174 in category leagues. And he started at 124, so he's actually regressed from where he was typically drafted. And then Zegras had a massive fall. He was pre-rank 73, and now he's currently 270, despite 4 goals, 1 assist, 2 power play points, 17 shots, 8 hits in 8 games. The thing is, if this team was ever going to become fantasy relevant, it should be this week when they play San Jose twice and Vancouver, who just got their first 2 wins of the season, and they have been middling, or at least struggling mightily until those 2 wins. But the best waiver option may be Frank Vetrano, 8% owned, 8 games, 3 goals, 11 hits, 12 blocks, but 23 shots, so 2.875 shots per game. That's what he's known for. He just comes down the wing and he shoots the puck, and he's scored a couple goals already. Not much of anything else, but he is getting power play 1 time apparently, so there is that as well. The only other player who's likely available on your wire and in the top 300 fantasy players overall is Dmitry Kulikov, and he's a strict hits blocks option. So last week, 1 assist, 6 shots, 7 hits, and 7 blocks was pretty good, and he was ranked 151 for the week. But yeah, as you can see on the season, 2 assists, 8 games, 8 shots, 15 hits, and 18 blocks. You could probably find a little bit better than that on the waiver wire, though. And I definitely really would not recommend Anaheim goaltending right now. I even wouldn't want Stolarz. He's not ownable either. Now, moving on to the other teams that play 4 times this week that have slightly worse schedules. LA plays 4 times this week. They're at St. Louis Monday, back-to-back at Dallas Tuesday night, and then 2 tough road games back-to-back. And then they're at Chicago Thursday, and then home for the Panthers Saturday. So this is a pretty brutal schedule. That's why I didn't really mention them earlier for the best schedule, but they do play 4 times. So LA is currently, they have the most goals against in the league with 41, but they also have the second most goals for in the league with 35. So what that tells me is stay away from the Kings goaltending, but there is value to be had in their forward group and their D-core. So just a question. If I asked you to name the Kings leading scorer who also happened to be second in the NHL in goals, and let's say you weren't looking at a giant picture of his face with his stats on it, would you be able to tell me who it is? Because I probably would not have. It's Gabe Vilardi, former 11th overall pick of the Kings in 2017. They also have the 7th overall pick from that draft, Elias Anderson, so way to go, Rangers. But Vilardi, dual eligible left wing, right wing. He has 10 games played, 7 goals. That's second in the league. 4 assists, 11 points, 2 on the power play, 27 shots. That's 2.7 per game. He's been really, really good and a really good waiver pickup for you if you picked him up last week. I know Fantasy Puck was all over that earlier in the season. He's 54% owned, so he may be there for you despite that ownership. Just kind of depends on your league size. He's probably not going to be there in a 12-team league. Maybe a 14, 16-team league, he'll be there for you. But yeah, if he is there, go and grab him. He was preseason ranked 763, and he's currently 68th overall. And this is exactly why I tend to tell people to stay away from rookies in your draft. So if you wasted a top 12 round pick on, let's say, Alex Holtz, for example, Toe Dragons, he's already been dropped, and you missed out on a player like Vinny Trocheck, who I grabbed in that range, and he's number 20 overall in the league right now, and you could have played the waiver wire anyways and found a guy like Velarde or maybe Dominic Kubalik, who gets hot pretty early. So either of those two guys, and Gabe Velarde is second in the league in goals, as I just mentioned. That's why you don't swing on rookies too early in the draft. You can find him. He's not necessarily a rookie. He's been around for a while, but he just hasn't kind of cracked that top six until now, and now he's kind of getting the opportunity and he's running with it. So you can find these awesome files early in the season and pick them up when their ownership is lower than 54%, and that would potentially be a better play than picking a guy that you think is going to have a good year who's a rookie in the draft. But I digress. So getting back to the list, if you're in a league with heavy weighting for faceoffs, you need to either trade for or add Anze Kopitar, who's fourth in the league with 120 faceoff wins at 61.5%, or you could look at the waiver wire with Phil Deneau at 18% ownership. So Deneau is 14th in the league with 90 faceoff wins at 55% in the faceoff dot, and he's averaging over 2 shots per game and chipping in some points as well. You can see 4 goals, 2 assists in 10 games, a power play point, 21 shots, 9 hits, and 11 blocks. Not bad at all. Speaking of shots per game, can I interest you in a dual eligible Trevor Moore averaging 3.1 shots per game, and with all that shot volume, only 1 goal. And if you look at his shooting percentage, it's very low. So last year he was at 8.4% and put up 17 goals on the year. His career high shooting percentage is 15.8%, and that was only in 15 games. So if you look at a better sample size, 11.4% in 56 games. So I'd look for regression closer to that 10% area, which would give you a nice entry point to his file before he scores all of those goals. If he never does score, he gets enough shot volume to be relevant in many fantasy leagues and many formats. So if you have shot weighting in your points league, or if you have a shots category in your categories league, he's one of the top 10 shooters in the league right now, as we'll see in the next coming slides. But if you need a defenseman, Sean Durzi playing very well. He's only been held pointless 3 times this year, so he may not pop off for a ton of points one night, but he chips in a goal or an assist on most nights, which may be preferable depending on what you need. His ice time is in the 19 to 22 minute range depending on team need, and he does see some power play time as well, usually PP2, but sometimes he gets a look with the top guys as well. If you need a hits guy just for hits, Carl Grundstrom, 0% owned. He leads the Kings with 26 hits. But if you want to try to get that defenseman, which is preferable, you could look at Mikey Anderson, 0% owned, 10 games, 3 assists, 15 shots, 19 hits, and 12 blocks. So a little bit of a hits and blocks guy for Mikey Anderson. But the better play might be Matt Roy with 3 goals, 1 assist, 21 shots, 12 hits, and 21 blocks. But I'm not sure how long his play keeps this up, as he's usually between 0.24 and 0.31 points per game, and he's never been above 0.08 goals per game. But the peripherals should continue. He still should be able to hit and block. I just don't know if he's going to continue putting up goals and assists. That brings us to the Washington Capitals. They also have a 4-game week. For Washington, it's all about the defense, and it just depends on what you need. So if you need a hits and blocks guy with some points as well, pick up Dmitry Orlov, 5 points in 9 games, 20 shots, 27 hits, and 13 blocks as well. But if you're just looking for a hits coverage guy, for forwards, there's Nick Dowd, 1% owned with 29 hits. Or you could go with 19% owned Martin Ferivari with 36 hits, which puts him 4th in the league, just 3 hits back of first place. So he is hitting everything that moves. He's averaging, let me do the math in my head, a little bit under 4 hits per game, but that is still really good for Ferivari. Nick Jensen, I just kind of wanted to mention him quickly as well. 6 points and 12 shots, 12 hits, 13 blocks. 2% owned, and he's tied for second on the team in points and averaging 20 minutes a night. So just in case you're in a really deep league and you need a defenseman, they play 4 times this week. And then the only forward that I'd recommend is TJ Oshie, and he's 41% owned, but this is contingent on his health. So he left Saturday's game against the Predators with a lower body injury, so monitor that if you want to target Oshie, but he does get some decent offensive production. He's usually the bumper guy on PP1, and he also hits a decent amount. So 22 hits thus far. He's dual position eligible. He's a guy that you're probably going to want access to most weeks, but this week just kind of depends on his health. As we turn to the Week 4 Sunday plays, as we started this in, I believe it was the last video, on Sunday, you usually need somebody. You need somebody to put you over the top to win your matchup, and you kind of, you have to feel it out and see what category you need, or if you're in a points league, see how your points are weighted. But you will likely need some guys on Sunday to put you over the top. And as I mentioned before, the Panthers have a great Sunday matchup, so you may want to target Panthers specifically for Sunday, as it could be a goal fest against Anaheim. But there are 2 other games on Sunday. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the Leafs-Canes game because almost everyone fantasy relevant for both teams is owned up. But I do want to mention Party Marty Necas. 8 games, 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points, 2 on the power play, 22 shots. He's 48% owned. So if he's there, grab him ASAP. Also worth mentioning, if you drafted Seth Jarvis, you could have had Necas off the wire and saved yourself that pick, whatever pick you used for him. Jarvis, 51% owned, 2 goals, 1 assist, 16 shots in 8 games. But let's take a closer look at Detroit versus the New York Rangers. Now, the Wings play 4 times this week, and you can see that at the bottom. They have Buffalo Monday, then Washington Thursday, and then a back-to-back at home against the Isles, and then on the road against the Rangers. Not a great Sunday option given the second night of the back-to-back with travel. But let's take a look anyway, just because there have been some really great stories in Detroit. So to start us off, Dominic Kubalik, not given a qualifying offer in Chicago for absolutely no reason, got pissed off, wanted to show the world he's still a good player, and he's doing just that right now. 8 games played, 4 goals, 7 assists, 11 points, 12 hits, 5 power play points, 20 shots, and he's currently ranked 34th in category leagues. He's only 71% owned, so if he's there on your wire, what are you doing listening to me blabber on? Go grab him immediately, but he's probably not there for you at 71% ownership. Dylan Larkin is probably less available for you at 87%, but he's off to a great start as well. 4 goals, 6 assists, 4 power play points, 24 shots, 8 games. If you're in a face-off league, he's 20th in the league in face-off wins with 80 at 51.28%. So he's a must-own in points leagues with heavy face-off weighting. And I'm absolutely going to toot my own horn here. As you can see, I do own both of those guys. And I was also on this channel preseason telling you to fade Mo Seider. And if you look at his production, not bad at all in terms of peripherals. 16 shots, 18 hits, 20 blocks, but only 1 assist, 1 power play point, and a -1 in 8 games. And if you look at all the value lost, his preseason rank was 44. He's now at 176. His ADP was 45.3 in the 4th round, and you could have had the same or better peripheral coverage with guys like Hakanpää, maybe Arbor Jacki, Connor Clifton, Kyle Burrows. There's a bunch of waiver guys that you can get for that peripheral coverage. That's why I, kind of was telling you not to pick him in the 4th round. I would have liked him later. He's a decent player, and I do think that he's going to have a pretty good season, and he is the power play quarterback there and everything else. But a 4th round pick on a guy like that, that's why I don't usually go that way in the draft. Now on to ads for this Sunday. Andrew Kopp comes to MSG for the first time since a playoff run last year. And if you're new to this, every former player plays out of their mind against the Rangers. So just think back to last Tuesday. Alex Georgiev played the game of his life and beat the Rangers in a shootout. Kopp is 22% owned. He's been thoroughly disappointing this year so far. 2 assists in 8 games, 9 shots. That's about it. But again, coming back to the Garden could make for a good one-day stream if you need it. If you want the same peripheral coverage that Seider gets, why not try Ben Chiarot at 5% owned? Almost identical stats, except Chiarot also has a goal on the season. So he's a pretty decent option, mainly for shots, hits, and blocks. Again, only 5% owned, and he's hovering around that 250 mark. He's at 278 right now, but they do have a pretty good week. Deeper league plays. Adam Ernie, 0% owned, but 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points in 8 games, and 24 hits. Really impressive from Adam Ernie. And he's available for pretty much every single person listening to this, 0% owned. So not even his family owns him up. And he's going to get you hits coverage and some point totals as well. So that's a pretty decent option. He's dual eligible. And then how about dual eligible Oscar Sundqvist, center right wing, 1 goal, 4 assists, 2 power play points, 6 shots, 9 hits, 5 blocks in only 6 games. So almost a point per game guy. He's not that owned as well, 1% ownership. He is out right now. I'll have to check and make sure that injury is not going to keep him out for very long, but that is a pretty decent option if he can get back. Now, Detroit does play 4 times this week, so these could be options all week, but especially for that Sunday matchup. But what if you wanted some Rangers exposure for this game? If you remember back to my draft video, I picked Trocheck 11th round, 121 overall. He was pre-ranked 251. He's currently 20th overall, and I did not expect that. I was picking him up mainly for the hits coverage, which you see he only has 15 hits, which is not bad at all, but the shot volume is incredible. 27 shots. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Jesus. 26 hits, 33 shots, so that's pretty good. And then 4 goals, 5 assists, 9 points in 9 games, 3 on the power play. He had 2 goals and an assist and covered pretty much everything on Saturday against Dallas. But he is pretty owned up at 76%. If you're in a shallow league and he's there, go and grab him. But if not, maybe look at some of these other guys. Lafreniere, 42% owned, still playing with Panarin. A goal, 3 assists is okay, but the shot volume is why you'd grab him. He's the guy with 27 shots and 15 hits, so he's still hitting a pretty decent amount, and he's getting some shot volume as well. He's also getting a little bit of power play 2 time, but just nothing to add to his totals here. But his shooting percentage is 3.7. So I'd look for that to climb. If you see that shot volume and you see, 3.7 shooting percentage, I would expect some goals to start coming from Lafreniere. So if he is available, you might want to get out ahead of that, as if he starts scoring, he's going to get pretty owned up, especially with that line assignment. Now, Cabo Caco still playing top line with Kreider and Zibanejad, also getting a little power play time here and there. Only 2 goals, 1 assist in 9 games, and his shooting percentage is 12.5%, so not much there to signal he's about to break out. You'd mainly be picking up Caco for his line assignment. But Goudreau might actually be a better fantasy own right now. 3 position eligible, very rare. 2 goals, 2 assists, 15 shots, 15 hits. He's a decent option for deeper leagues. He's just not getting any power play time. He's been filling in for Philip Hedl as the third line center who's been out with an upper body injury. But Hedl is close to returning and could be a decent option himself at 2 goals, 1 assist in 6 games and only 10% owned. Now, if you want hits, obviously you're going to look at Ryan Reeves. He's got 25 on the year. But why not Sammy Blais? He's going to get you a couple points on top of that. And if you look at the time on ice, 8 minutes versus 11 minutes. So you have much more of a chance of other good things happening. And Sammy Blais is dual position eligible. So, Reeves just hasn't been, getting a ton of ice time and hasn't been, one of those guys who's, he's still pretty close to the top of the league in hits. But at this point in the season, I'd rather have Sammy Blais for this purpose, as he's dual position eligible. And that's going to be a little bit better for your fantasy team. So let's move on to a quick look at the most ownable guys who lit it up last week and may be available on your wire depending on league size. This is probably more for 8 to 12 team leagues, but still. What you see here stat-wise is just what these players did last week. So Dominic Kubalik, I mentioned him earlier. Erik Karlsson, I mentioned him in the preseason to look out for him, especially with goal scoring, as we saw on one of the goal scoring graphs that I did. He was a 0.2 goal per game guy, which is usually around 16 to 20 goals. He had 4 goals in 4 games, 2 assists, 3 power play points, and 18 shots. And one of those goals was a game winner. So very impressive from Karlsson. Seth Jones, I just heard news that he may be out a couple of weeks, which is unfortunate because he had an excellent week last week. 4 games, 3 assists, 2 power play points, 16 shots, 7 hits, 8 blocks. Matt Barzal, all assists, 6 assists in 4 games, but 2 power play points as well. And the Islanders are kind of hit or miss. They either don't score at all or they light it up. So make of that what you will. And if you're going to go to the Isles, you could also go to Anders Lee, 52% owned, 2 goals, 2 assists in 4 games, 2 power play points, 10 shots, 8 hits, and 5 blocks. He's a strict left wing eligible guy, though, which may explain his ownership. I did mention Brandon Montour earlier. The only other guy is Ricard Raquel, 57%, 4 games, 2 goals, 1 assist, 2 power play points, 19 shots, which is really good. And we'll get to that in just a second. And then 6 hits on top of that as well. In terms of goaltending, I'm highlighting only guys that might be available to you on the wire right now. At the top of the list are guys like Allmark, Thompson, Sorokin, Kemper, Hellebuck, Fleury, Ottinger, etc. But their ownership is high enough that they'd be trade targets, not waiver pickups. So let's look at who you could pick up this week. So Vitek Vanacek had a great week. I believe, so I wrote this right before the game started, but he just picked up another win, a 7-1 win. So that's 4 games, 3 wins. I don't know how that affects his stats, but let's just assume before the game today, 1.29 goals against, 0.940 save percentage. It kind of looks like he's taken over the number 1 role, and he did get that 1 shutout earlier in the week. So he's a potential option, 34% owned. If you're in, I don't know, maybe a 12-team league, he's still probably available for you there. And then, probably wouldn't want him in a 10-team league, but anything 12 or bigger, you might want to target Vitek Vanacek, at least for the time being. 2 guys I have my eye on are Stuart Skinner and Spencer Martin. 150 goals against, 963 save percentage for Stuart Skinner. 2 games, 2 wins. Looked very decent in those 2 games. And then Spencer Martin, only 1 game, but he looked really good. 971 save percentage, and that kind of stabilized Vancouver a little bit. They got their first win of the season the night before, and then they go with Spencer Martin the next game. Kind of a risky situation, but he pulled it out for him. He's only 2% owned. So Skinner's ownership has been rising lately because people are noticing that Jack Campbell is struggling. So maybe keep an eye on that. He might become the 1A at this point. But Spencer Martin's not going to be the 1A, but he is going to be a pretty reliable backup in Vancouver. And then Sam Montembeault, 1 game, 1 win, but a 956 save percentage. I just don't think of him as being a reliable fantasy option, so that's why I usually don't give him out there to you guys. But he did have a good game, so I'll put him in there. Now, we're going to look by category. I'll try to go through this as quick as possible. This is goal coverage. So Gabe Vilardi, we talked about him earlier. Victor Olofsson, we talked about him earlier. Shane Pinto has a goal in all but 2 games this season, despite not playing more than 16 minutes in any game, which is very impressive. I would have expected him to garner more ice time with the absence of Josh Norris, but he is still listed as the 3rd-line center, and they aren't giving him top 6 minutes yet. I do believe he is getting top power play minutes, though, so correct me if I'm wrong on that. But you could either try to get out in front of that bump in ice time or just bank on this hot streak continuing. But either way, he's been really nice for Toe Dragons, who picked him up last week. Then you also see Jaden Schwartz and Jared McCann, the 2 Seattle guys, both with 5 goals in 10 games. So on a per-game basis, not quite as impressive as they have played a couple more games than some of the other teams out there. But these are still really good options. And then Jaden Schwartz, we'll see him in the shots part of this video as well. 32 shots is really impressive. Jared McCann gets a little bit more of a benefit from the dual position eligibility. So that pretty much covers it for goals. Shots leaders haven't changed much since last week, but we do see 2 new names in there, Ricard Raquel, and as I just mentioned, Jaden Schwartz. So Timo Meier, I mean, look at the shot volume from Meier, 53 shots. So some people have been asking me about Timo Meier and trading for him. If you need a shots guy, or if your league has, point waiting for shots, definitely keep or grab Timo Meier if you can. But otherwise, yeah, he's probably, the production's decent. It's not bad, but his main feature is shots. But as I mentioned before, you have Bjorkstrand, another Seattle guy. He's up at the top of this list. He's usually there. Jake DeBrusk, 4.5 shots per game. Really impressive. He's still in the top 6, but maybe, just maybe, he loses a little bit of ice time with Brad Marchand back. We'll have to wait and see. And then Ricard Raquel, just mentioned him as well. 38 shots. He's 4.2 shots per game guy now. Didn't know where that was coming from. 50% owned. So he's maybe there for you, maybe not. 4 goals, 1 assist, 2 power play points, 11 hits, 8 blocks as well. So pretty decent category coverage, but his main feature is, again, shots. And then, as we mentioned before, Trevor Moore, he's still there. He's probably the most ownable guy here at 10%, 31 shots, and he's giving you exposure to that nice line assignment with Phil Deneau and Victor Arvidsson. So that line stays together, and he's benefiting in the shot department. The other 2 guys have 21 shots apiece. So he's about 10 shots above both of his line mates. So he's the trigger guy on that line. Now, For power play ads, I made a mistake here before. I've mentioned Shane Gostisbehere in the past. I picked him up when my team lost Ekblad when he went down, and I mentioned him specifically in that Ekblad video, but I forgot to add that he's also in a contract year, and he's trying to play his way out of Mullet Arena. So in a contract, you're trying to get the hell out of Arizona. That's giving him a lot of motivation. And he leads these waiver ads in power play points per game. But I say that kind of in air quotes because, 72% owned, Kubalik 71%. These guys maybe are probably not there for you. Lehkonen, I mentioned him before. His ownership hasn't really changed. But some of these guys are not as owned up. But in the power play points per game feature, Gostisbehere's number one, Lehkonen's number two in terms of guys you could potentially get. So that's really impressive from both of those guys. Kalen Addison's still there. His ownership has creeped up a little bit. He's basically assist guy and power play guy right now. No goals. He's 1734 of ice time. Not much hits or blocks coverage, but not even a lot of shots there either. 8 shots in 8 games. So he's not really shooting the puck either, but he is the power play quarterback, and that power play is lethal. And then you have some of the usual suspects. The most ownable guy here is Nick Ritchie, 4% owned. He's got 4 power play points in 7 games. Again, I just don't know what to make of that because I don't know how long that can continue. I'd be much more favorable on David Krejci. He's day-to-day. 29% owned. I would definitely think that he's more of a guy that you would want. 8 points in 8 games, 4 of them on the power play, 11 shots. But again, day to day, not sure what the injury is there, but you can check that out if you want to grab David Krejci. Now, as we move to assists, Kevin Hayes is your guy if you need some assists, some of which come on the power play. So if you look at it, 9 assists, 4 on the power play, 17 shots, pretty good. But he's got 10 points in 8 games. And Philly looks really good to start the season. So that's a pretty promising sign for Kevin Hayes, 1.125 assists per game. Josh Morrissey, he seems to be the guy in Winnipeg over Neil Pionk. Pionk will probably get you some hits coverage, but you do get pretty decent coverage here with Josh Morrissey. It's just a lot of assists, no goals, couple power play points, 10 shots. Nothing crazy, but the assists are there, and he's on the power play a little bit. So he's a defenseman that you could potentially look at for that category coverage. We mentioned Addison before, and then Dominic Kubalik as well. Now, as I've mentioned before in many hits hits portions of these videos, a lot of these guys are available on the wire. And what I've highlighted here are the guys who are top 25 in hits and ranked in the top 250 for category leagues. So that's pretty much all of these guys that are highlighted. Not a lot of surprises here. Kyle Burrows, a little bit surprising there. Covers a little bit of blocks coverage as well, so he could be a hits and blocks guy. Some of the best hitters, though, Evander Kane, if you went and grabbed him in the draft, you're looking really smart right now. 34 shots, 39 hits. He's got 8 points in 9 games, so really nice file there. I chose to go Tanner Jeannot just for hits coverage, and he's doing pretty well as well. 3 goals and assist in 9 games, 19 shots, and 37 hits. I mentioned Faravari earlier. Not going to go through all of these guys, but yeah, most of these guys are owned up. I did want to mention JG Pageau. If you're in a league with waiting for both hits and faceoffs, Pageau is 13th in the league with 90 faceoff wins at 55%, and he's averaging 3.33 hits per game. So just did quickly want to mention him for those guys with faceoffs. Now, blocks, we're going to go over this very quickly. David Savard is, him, and I picked up Martinez for my own team, but these guys are head and shoulders above most of the rest of the league in terms of blocks coverage, but that's what you're getting them for. So David Savard, 4.44 blocks per game. That's incredible. He's only 5% owned, so he's probably there for you. And if you're in a categories league with blocks, he's the guy that you're going to want as your 5th defenseman. But I don't think anyone worth grabbing specifically for hits or even hits and blocks plays 4 times this week. You do have Matt Roy. He does play 4 times this week. He's the one exception. So 21 shots, 12 hits, 21 blocks. And then we mentioned the offensive production as well. And then I have John Carlson. He's also got that 4-game week, but he's day-to-day, and he's not available on your waiver wire. So those are the only guys to look at. But yeah, you can definitely find some blocks coverage and some hits and blocks guys. And again, if you had Jacob Trouba in the draft, he's doing a little bit of everything. 29 shots, 29 hits, 23 blocks, 3 assists. So yeah, he's killing it right now. He's 45th overall in category leagues. Now, in my THHL matchup this week, it's all coming down to one goaltending start for Keyport Red Raiders this week. He has John Gibson against Toronto, so I hope he gets shelled, but in all likelihood, he won't get the W, which will keep us tied there. I may end up losing the save percentage as I'm ahead by a hair, but if I lose both of those categories, the only way I can win this week is to add a minimum of 4 blocks, hence why I did pick up Alec Martinez. Now, on my I streamed him today for that purpose alone, and as you saw in the previous slide, he's averaging around 4 blocks per game, so he should get that done for me, but it's never that easy, is it? This win could put me in first place in my league, so I'm definitely holding my breath, and if that does happen, it will make 11 of a possible 12 weekly matchups that I've won across my 4 leagues, and all of that took place with McAvoy, Pacioretty, and Ekblad on my IR, and I just added Carlson there to the IR plus. He got hurt on Saturday night. So I intend to have all of those guys for the playoffs. So things are looking really nice for me right now, and that's what happens when you follow the data draft strategy and you start to think strategically about what you need for your team and how each guy slots in for what you need. Your team is essentially an engine. You need every piece in the right place to get you over the finish line, and that's what the data draft strategy is all about. But if you made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you for sticking with it. Good luck in your matchups this week, and I will see you in the next one.